Chapter 2. Behind the curtain, the acting stopped. Flavia walked away from the three men without a word and made towards her dressing room. The tenor looked after her with the same sort of look that had animated Cavaradossi's face when he thought of her, dolci baci or languidi carezze, the loss of which would be worse than death. Scarpia pulled out his telefonino to call his wife and tell her he'd be at the restaurant in 20 minutes. The conductor, who had no interest in Flavia save that she obey his tempi and sing well, left his colleagues with a silent nod and headed for his own dressing room. Halfway down the corridor, Flavia caught the heel of her shoe in the hem of her scarlet gown and lurched forward, managing to save herself from falling only by lunging towards one of the costume assistants. The young woman proved surprisingly strong, as well as quick-thinking. She wrapped her arms around the singer and managed to support her weight and thrust without being knocked to the ground. As soon as Flavia was steady on her feet, she pulled herself free of the younger woman, asking, "Are you all right?" "It's nothing, Signora," the assistant said, reaching across her body to rub at her shoulder. Flavia placed a hand on the woman's forearm. "Thank you for catching me," she said. "I didn't really think about it. I just grabbed you." Then, after a moment, "One fall is enough for tonight, don't you think?" Flavia nodded, thanked her again, and continued down the corridor to her dressing room. She started to open the door, but paused, shaking in delayed reaction to her near fall and with the adrenaline rush that always followed performances. Feeling slightly faint, she rested her other hand against the jamb and closed her eyes. Moments passed, and then the sound of voices at the other end of the corridor energized her, and she opened the door and went in. Roses here, roses there, roses, roses everywhere. She caught her breath at the sight of the flowers, every surface covered with vases filled with dozens of them. She stepped into the room and closed the door. Motionless, she studied the sea of yellow, growing even more uneasy when she noticed that the vases were not the usual catch-alls that most theatres kept for such occasions, chipped, even paint-smeared, some of them obviously taken from the prop room to be put to less visible use. "Audio?" she muttered, going back through the open door. Her usual dresser stood to the left, a dark-haired woman, old enough to be the mother of the costume assistant who had saved her from falling. As she had, after every performance, she'd come to take Flavia's costume and wig back to the storeroom. "Marina," Flavia ventured, "did you see who brought these flowers?" She waved vaguely and stepped back to let her into the room. "Oh, che belli!" Marina exclaimed when she saw them. "How much they must have cost! There's dozens and dozens." Suddenly she, too, noticed the vases and asked, "Where'd those come from?" "Don't they belong to the theatre?" Marina shook her head. "No, we don't have anything like that. They're real." Seeing Flavia's confusion, she pointed to a tall vase of alternating white and transparent stripes. "Glass, I mean. That one's Venini," she said. "Lucio used to work there, I can tell." "I don't understand," Flavia said, wondering how the conversation had led to this. She turned her back on the woman and said, "Can you unzip me?" She raised her arms, and Marina helped her step out of the shoes and then the costume. Flavia pulled her dressing gown from the back of a chair and sat in front of the mirror and, almost without thinking, began to wipe at the thick makeup. Marina hung the dress on the back of the door and stood behind Flavia to help her remove her wig. She slipped her fingers under the back and prized it from Flavia's head, then peeled away the tight rubber cap that covered her hair. As soon as her head was free, Flavia dug her fingers into her hair and scratched her head for a full minute, sighing with relief and pleasure. "Everybody says that's the worst part," Marina said. "The wig. I don't know how all of you stand it." Flavia spread her fingers and ran them through her hair repeatedly, knowing it would dry quickly in the overheated room. It was as short as a boy's, one of the reasons she was so seldom recognized on the street, her fans having in mind the long-haired beauty they saw on stage, not this woman with a short cap of curly hair in which there were already faint traces of grey.